curriculum that will stand the test of time. And I believe that we have been enrolled into this year's exam under diploma and national innovation diploma, but for the COVID. And so far, that's what estimate. So beyond the certification, this training young men and women, we also have the plan for having a national innovation diploma on solar technology and management, and that's what that document is with MBT now, and we're waiting for the effective takeoff of the program. So, Mr. Moderator, that's it. What we have for STV in the Energy Academy for now. Maybe toward the end, we can be able to also show you the clip of what the milestones are about to record. Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. And over to you, sir.
Yes, a big thank you to every of the eco-friendly family. It's a pleasure to see that we are trying to change the narrative of providing alternative energy in the area. Like we all know, in Africa, without energy, Africa will not grow. Like my good friend always say, he said, when the world was created, he said, let there be light. And the Europeans and the developed country, they started by providing light. But Africa, because we want to look for money, we started by looking for money. Now we all went back again and start looking for the light. Without energy, Africa will not grow. Our guest speaker today is our own Professor Abubakar Sambo, renowned
So, President, are you still there? Are you still there?
Sorry, Dr. Sonny just went off. So, Dr. Magnus, you can carry on as the host. Yes, before Dr. Sonny comes back.
I'm very sorry, this is the result of network. Let me reconnect it. I'm very sorry. I was thrown out of the meeting by the network. This is our network failure. It's not my fault anyway. So like I'm saying, the guest speaker for today is Professor Abubakar Sambo. He's the chairman, Tax Force on Power. And why I mentioned our own, he's the chairman, advisory board of Council for Renewable Energy, where I am serving as the president of the Council for Renewable Energy. You are welcome, Professor Abubakar Sambo. Our second speaker is the person of I welcome all our guests, all our friends in our eco sector. I will open the floor now for our guest speaker, Professor Sambo Abubakar. You are welcome. We're always happy to hear you because we learn a lot when you speak. Thank you very much, Professor Sambo. The floor is open. Thank you. You're welcome.
very much, Mr. President. Can you allow me to share the screen now?
Yes, of course.
Can you see the screen now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it, Prof. Talking from Usuka.
Once again, I thank you very much for allowing me to share my thinking with the distinguished participants of this very important webinar. I can see so many distinguished participants from the Vice President of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, former Director General of National Office of Technology Acquisition and Promotion, the Binder, to Professor Paulinus Ugoke, Director of Energy Center at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, His Excellency Ambassador Harry Macaulay. Of course, you have introduced him very well, and I'm glad as former Minister of Energy, he has found time to be with us. So I will now use the Nigerian parlance and say all other protocols will be observed.
Yes,
now,
sir.
My reason for accepting the invitation of A. Stephen Academy to present the lecture today is what I believe everybody knows, that energy demand is a continuously changing matter. It is always upward rising. So there's always things to do, move towards meeting the demand. And our own country is indeed a very complicated one, but we need to sit together, remind ourselves of the fine details that we need to bring into consideration to succeed in changing the landscape and moving towards fulfilling the needs of our people. Now, this presentation, I need to make it fast. Like I said at the very beginning, I know Saturdays are days for all kinds of activities, and I don't think participants would like to stay too long on this forum. So I made the presentation in 7 sections, but they won't be too long. In the introduction, it's just meant to bring things into perspectives, energy and environmental interactions. And then, of course, for this kind of meetings, we need to give a general overview of the energy resource endowment of our country. And I will quickly move to discuss the power sector. We followed by a little bit of discussion on oil and gas, and then I'll move to environmental concerns. My thinking on how to move forward in bringing as much environmental consideration as possible while meeting the extreme energy poverty that is bedeviling much of Africa, not only Nigeria, is what is going to be discussed second to the last segment. Then, of course, in this kind of presentations, you need to round up things to section. So, to begin with, I want to start by saying the obvious, which the president of the academy and Dr. Magnus have already mentioned, and that is that no good standard of living can be realized without adequate, reliable, and indeed affordable energy supplies for the major economic sectors of all nations. This include the industrial, the transport, the services, and the household sectors. In fact, what we are all used to grasp is fossil fuels, like oil and natural gas, and also coal. And of course, I know nearly everybody in this meeting knows that utilizing fossil fuels goes ahead with a lot of emissions. And of course, they are exhaustible. As a matter of fact, 87% of carbon dioxide emissions from human sources arise from the combustion of fossil fuels that has four major components. Electricity generation, contributing about 41%. Transportation, when you say transportation, is the whole part, from aeroplanes, buses, motor cars, trucks, heavy equipment used in agriculture, road construction, all of them fall under transportation. And then the next is industry, and then there are other utilization. It should be noted, I said 87% of the human causes of emissions, because they are natural ones. What happens in the seas, what happens on the trees, in the oceans, those ones cannot be controlled. They are naturally brought up. Next, I want to show this slide, which is really to bring things into clearer perspectives. And that is to say that since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, fossil fuel burning has released more than 500 million tons of carbon dioxide, raising the atmospheric concentration of greenhouse gases, leading to climate change issues. And according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the United Nations Forum for Established Scientific Opinion, the world's temperature is expected to increase over the next 100 years by up to 5.8 degrees Celsius. An increase of about 6% is going to be catastrophic because this is much faster than anything experienced so far in human history. The goal of climate policy should be to keep global mean temperature rise not more than 2 degrees centigrade. And at that, because above that level, damage to the ecosystems and disruption to the climate system increases dramatically. And that will call for serious use of alternatives to fossil fuels, power generation, and also as fuels for transport and industrial heat. I'll come back to this point much later in the lecture. Now, renewable energy sources like Professor Magnus has very clearly explained, like solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, biomass, are in principle non-exhaustible, as they are always available on a cyclic or periodic basis and do not emit any greenhouse gases. Once there is life on Earth, you're going to get this renewable energy resources. And then the other point here is that renewable energy utilization being free from global warming and the sources being inaccessible are the preferred pathways for sustainable energy development, and in particular for emerging Nigeria, like Nigeria, with massive energy poverty. There's the urgent need to significantly minimize carbon dioxide emissions in the power and transport sectors, and sustainable pathways should be adopted for stability of our environment and by extension, global environment as well. The huge oil and gas resources of Nigeria can be more utilized in the production of petrochemicals, in pharmaceuticals, production of fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, coal tar for road construction, amongst others. And all nations of the world, they will like oil and gas for these utilizations to improve the country, create so many industries and millions of jobs for the citizenry. Now, I want to move to the next section, and that is energy resources, because you cannot have meaningful lecture without looking at the resources. And in fact, it shows that our country is very well blessed in conventional fossil fuels and renewable energy. Why I say well blessed is that at the moment we are still riding on the back of oil and gas income to the country. So while going is good, make good use of it to direct money to build other segments, other sectors of our national economy. We are even more of a gas country than oil. And this is because we have more than 203 trillion standard cubic feet number one in Africa in terms of gas. Then coal is not too much. Tar sands is quite a lot, and it exists in the Niger Delta and part of Ondo, Ekiti State. Large hydro, we have got about 23.9 megawatts of resource. Right now, it's only a little less than 2,000 megawatts that is being utilized, so there's room for expansion. Small hydro is not too bad, 3,500 megawatts, but solar radiation is the biggest of them all. This is because from extreme south to extreme north, the endowment is from 3.5 kilowatt hour per meter squared per day to sub, and this will enable utilization of solar radiation for solar thermal and solar photovoltaic applications for 85% of the land area of the country. That means virtually all of every state can generate meaningful energy from solar energy. Now, wind is not too much, but as I will show a little later, there are some few spots where we can extract a lot of energy from wind. We need to discuss biomass also, because at the moment, large chunk of Nigerians focus attention on biomass for their energy needs, especially in the household sectors. There's one energy resource that we should not neglect. That's the nuclear element. Uranium deposit exists in the northeastern states and across the state. Of course, we are not doing much in this area, while our neighboring country, Niger, is doing some very hard work. My view is that even if we are not going to use it, mining of the ore can be done. So many countries rely on nuclear for their own electricity generation. Now, the solar that I mentioned, that I said almost 85% of the land is site that shows this very clearly. You can go down up to Lagos, Aba, even Wari, to get some meaningful solar radiation. The other day I was in Benin, and we were involved in a project that is utilizing solar energy in Benin City in Edo State. This is the map that gives you the resource availability of wind. You can see in the extreme north, wind is quite strong, from 8.5 in Sokoto to 10 meters per second in Kasina, and in Borno area around 8.5 meters per second. Then when you go down to Plateau, also as strong as that. It goes down a little bit around Lagos, but then again around Ebonyi, Enugu, you can extract energy from wind, especially for electricity generation and water pumping. Mr. Chairman, I want to move quickly to give a quick overview of the nation's power sector. And I want to start by again reminding us all that it was since around year 2000 that the government concluded the funds available to it cannot be used to sort out the power sector. And that is why it set up a very powerful committee that at the end of the day made a submission which led to the enactment of the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act that liberalized the sector and allow the private sector to come in. The reform in the power sector actually led to the unbundling of the erstwhile NEPA into 18 successor companies, 6 of them for generation, 1 transmission, and 11 for distribution. And there are so many institutions that were thereafter created. And this included the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission for regulating the sector, the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company is a special purpose vehicle for trading electricity, the Rural Electrification Agency to fast track powering of rural areas. There's also the Rural Electrification Fund to assist in funding the expansion of the access to rural dwellers on utilization of either on or off-grid supplies. And then there's one that is very important, the Power Consumer Assistance Fund, which is to protect low-income and poor consumers through lifeline tariff. privatization is another step which took place in 2013. That's about 5 years down the line, about 8 years after the enactment of the law. To me, it was a little bit too long, but of course, the Nigerian terrain is a very difficult one. And this privatization led to the sale of the distribution companies to the private sector 60%, and government retained 40%. And also, the generation companies were likewise sold back to the level of 1%, while government retained 49% stake there. The two hydropower companies at Shiroro and Kainji were not sold, but concession for 30 years, with the government retaining ownership of the asset. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has been doing very well. It has produced a multi-year tariff order that adjusts power tariffs periodically in line with inflation and exchange rate, amongst others, and which allows for reasonable cost recovery by any investor in the power sector. And I will quickly say that what is written here or is stated here is one thing, but implementation is another. I know most of us know that once any time government moves to allow NAC to review tariff, there's a big problem, especially coming from the labor unions. Of course, to a certain extent, one would have to agree with them, because if the service is still epileptic, well, tariff cannot be increased. I'll come back to this point a little later. Now, the major problems of the power sector, to put it in a summarized version, to me, the first and foremost problem is that electricity supply of about 4,500 megawatts for a population of more than 200 million Nigerians grossly inadequate. It's a non-starter. It should be noted that electricity demand projection produced by Energy Commission of Nigeria using the 2050 pathway calculator for a GDP growth rate of 7%, which we are hoping to attain, shows that by 2020, that is this year, demand is about 31,000 megawatts, and the SDG year of 2030 is about 63,000 megawatts, while by 2050, when our population is expected to be more than 400 million, it's going to be about 152,000 megawatts. The major problem of distribution, I'm sure all of us know of the reported rejection of supplies to GENCOs, and then there's the inability of DISCOs to collect payments from all consumers. There's also the inability of the DISCOs to pay the GENCOs and pay transmission company, and also pay the bulk electricity trading their due entitlements when electricity is sold to the DISCOs through index. Then lastly, on that same point, is the inability to supply meters for consumers. Now, the major problem of transmission to me is lack of adequate funds to strengthen and expand the national grid to as much of the country as possible, so that the company will be able to mill all the electricity generated for distribution to consumers. Now, there's also a problem of natural gas constraints. Of course, I'm sure many of you know already that about 80% of the nation's current power plant capacities are gas-fired. Their major complaint is that they do not get quantity and quality of gas to eat. There's also the problem of inability of licensees of the regulator to raise funds. The majority of licensees of NAC have difficulties in raising funds from financial institutions, and the major problem is that their business plans are unattractive to financial institutions, essentially because of the low electricity prices. There's also poor demand-side management. Recent studies by a number of organizations showed that there are significant wastages in the supply and consumption of electricity. And then, of course, there's a problem of the vandalization and customer indiscipline. Vandals often steal electricity cables, transformers, and other items, while some customers make illegal connections and sometimes bypass meters, thereby stealing electricity. And some of the pictures that I thought I should share. You can see on the left-hand side, top and bottom, you can see some unscrupulous Nigerians getting heavily affected by electricity. And then on the right-hand side, on top, you can see those arrested vandals. Then at the bottom of the right-hand side, you can see some, he looks like a power official doing illegal connections and all kinds of untoward activities. Mr. Chairman, I want to move on quickly, give us a brief on the oil and gas sector of the country by reminding us, first of all, oil exploration in 1908. But oil was not discovered until 8 years down the line, 8 years after. That's 1956 at Oloibiri in Bayelsa State. Upstream segment of the oil sector, exploration and production of oil and gas, while the downstream segment deals with transmission and conveyance of crude oil and gas, as well as refining in addition to distribution and marketing of the refined petroleum products and associated activities. For the downstream, NNPC has 4 refineries in Kaduna, Port Harcourt. Actually, Port Harcourt, there is old and new. Sometimes many Nigerians just say but there are actually 2 refineries in Port Harcourt, and Wari refinery also is the top one, with a combined capacity of 445,000 barrels a day. The refineries are linked to a network of pipeline depots all over the country. Distribution of refined products is done through more than 7,000 retail stations. At this point, I should quickly say that unfortunately for Nigeria, at any given time, you hardly get much more than half of that 445,000, which has led to importation, unfortunately, of refined petroleum products at great cost to Nigeria. Now, there is also the problem of underfunding, and this is because the NNPC has so many joint ventures, and the commitment of the country on joint ventures are best settled from budgetary provision from the government. Because, when oil is sold, money is not for NNPC, it's for the Nigerian government. That is why it's good to plan budgetary provision to enable NNPC to meet financial obligations in joint venture operations. There are also damages to oil and gas pipelines, although these damages have reduced substantially over the time because of the amnesty program. There is also a problem of the oil spills and water contamination. A record has shown that between 9 and 13 billion barrels of crude oil have been spilled since oil reached that. Gas flaring is also another bad practice. And records show that yearly the quantity of associated gas is pledged of the order of 99 million cubic meters. And that's about 2.5 billion cubic feet, with an estimated cost of about $2.5 billion. This is huge. And something must be done to utilize it. Of course, there's a problem of still the petroleum industry to what they pass. There's the ineffective use of the National Biofuel Policy that was approved by the Federal Executive Council in 2007, and essentially it is meant to conserve nation's oil and gas. While more and more reserves are found, they still need for us to conserve our oil and gas so that our great-grandchildren will have chance to benefit from it, even in other areas of pharmaceuticals, fertilizers, and so on and so forth. And there's need for us to conserve or utilize it. Of course, I'm sure you know what I mean here, because that biofuel policy is essentially the one that gives approval petroleum sector to blend premium motor spirit with ethanol on one hand, and to blend automotive gas oil with biodiesel on the other hand. Now, on the environmental concerns, the major ones are number one, consumption of fossil fuels, as I have mentioned, Earlier, for power generation and for transport fuels are the major contributors to carbon dioxide emission, which in turn leads to global warming and climate change problems. At the moment, it is not feasible to stop this altogether, but we can minimize it by increasing utilization of non-polluting sources and also doing some other things that I will mention a little later. There's also the problem of major oil and soil contaminations that arise periodically from oil spillages. Also, I've mentioned on this a little earlier. There's the problem of dams for hydropower projects. Sometimes they cause flooding of agricultural lands upstream and destruction of the ecology downstream. Indiscriminate felling of trees for fuel wood supplies is a major cause of desertification, desert encroachment in the northern states, while it promotes loss of soil fertility and soil erosion in the southern states. Now, Mr. Chairman, I want to quickly move to present my ideas on what to be done to improve the energy sector. When I say energy sector, the major ones, of course, from what I've presented so far, is power and then oil and gas, and then the environmental consideration also have to come back. Now, many Nigerians, I've listened to many Nigerians at conferences, at seminars, even at international forums, they say the reform in the power sector should be cancelled, should be scrapped. I say no. And the major reason is that the countries that have succeeded in power sector reforms, and we have one in Africa, Uganda, is doing very well, and Morocco is following suit, as well as some Asian countries and many European countries. They've succeeded. They've followed the steps that we have followed in Nigeria. That is having a low to liberalize the sector, liberalize the sector, privatizing the sector, and then setting up all these institutions like the regulator, bulk electricity trader, and so on and so forth. We have followed those steps. The only thing we need to do to make the reforms to work is to strengthen them by a number of steps. Number one is to expand the electricity generation through expanding of the energy mix. When the power available for skilled Nigerians is so small, then there will be dissatisfaction. So first step is to increase the power generation level, which I've also mentioned. And for generation, all efforts have to be made to expand the energy mix from the current two sources of gas and hydro. These are the major sources right now, to also bring the clean energy sources of solar, wind, biomass, biofuels in a significantly expanded pathway, so the supply will be increased from the current 4,500 megawatts to approach 3,000 megawatts by SDG year 2030, so that Nigeria will meet that goal number 7 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. And the way to do this is to use the model of the NIPP, National Integrated Power Projects, and Niger Delta Power Company model. You know, that was the model that was used to significantly expand gas power. We use that model to amend it to bring up board the expanded energy of the renewables. And this should include power plants and associated infrastructure for evacuating the power. The plants, after completion, should be sold or concessions, as the case may be, to the private sector after transparent bidding processes. I want to say that the expansion of the energy mix should be undertaken in an organized fashion based on computing the country's electricity demand and supply projections using computer-based models as done by the Energy Commission of Nigeria, which use, as I mentioned earlier, the 2050 pathway calculator that was initially developed by the Department of Environment and Climate Change, Department of Energy and Climate Change of the United Kingdom, but adapted to local conditions to compute electricity demand and supply. Now, what I mentioned is not completely new, or it's not that nothing is being done. The government, under the Energizing Education Program, picked the universities, and phase one had, I think, 13 or 14 universities. And this picture here shows you the 7.5 megawatt solar hybrid plant of Bayero University Kano, done by the Rural Education Agency, again, like I said, under Energizing Education Program. So it is something that can be replicated all over the federation. We have 40, 50 of it all over, and you see the terrain will begin to change solar electricity in place. Now, another picture that I need to show you here quickly also is the similar project at the Federal University in Dufe, Alithia Eco, in Ebonyi State, again under the same Energizing Education Program. Now, it's not that solar energy has not been used. No, all over the federation for so many years there has been utilization of solar and other renewable energy to increase the electricity provision to various communities. This picture shows you 4 different types of utilization. On the top left, you have a PV mini grid in a village in Sokoto, and top right hand side, you have street lighting in Cross River State. Bottom left, you have solar water pumping for university students in Sokoto, and bottom right, you have solar power system for a center for mentally sick Nigerians in Abia State. So there are different types of utilizations that have been going on slowly, but the two I mentioned, I showed, BUK and University in Ebonyi, are the way to go. Significant expansion. Now, other improvements that are needed for the power sector include expansion of distribution networks. And I want to say here, there's need to strengthen the discourse, significantly expand. And the first thing, in my strong opinion, is that the government that is held 40% shareholding for government should struggle by all means, get that money and pay to the discourse. And then the government will begin to ensure that much greater say from the government in the management of the discourse. This is very essential. I know it's difficult for government, but if government has committed its mind with the political will to do this, government will be able to do it. Like so many other countries that are even weaker, like I mentioned, Uganda and Morocco, that hasn't got as much money as us, they've done it. Then the next one is the expansion of the transmission grid. Again, there's need to fast track by deploying more funds to the agency from the government. I want to say that there is a divided opinion. While some engineers in the sector want government to continue running the transmission company, there are a chunk of engineers who are of the strong view that the transmission network of the country should be regionalized and concession to the private sector so that each region should be able to develop the transmission network in its own region according to its own capability and market viability. Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission should continue exercising its regulatory functions like it did by coming up with the meter asset provider regulations, because the discourse has been unable to meter all their consumers. So this regulation came, and this is something that should be implemented to the end. Again, one thing that NAC did, which is in the right direction, is to give ultimatum to some discourse to settle their debts or risk losing their operating licenses. Now, what I want to say next in the power sector is that as soon as the reforms I've mentioned, the strengthening that I've mentioned here, beginning with the expansion of electricity supply, reaches a certain level, then NAC should increase the electricity tariff so that members of the Nigerian electricity supply industry could begin to realize some profit margin. Without a certain level of profit margin, investors will not come to the country to continue funding. And like I said, the electricity that so sectors in our country will continue to be expanded. This is because demand will continue rising. That is why when you see the electricity requirement 2020 is different from that 2030 is different from that 2050 because population increases all the time, and therefore we need to attend to this point very seriously. One other area that is worth mentioning here is the fact that there are so many programs, so many roadmaps that they should all be integrated together. And what I mean here is the power sector recovery plan, along with the Vision 30-30-30 for power and the recent Siemens roadmap for power. And all of them should be integrated with goal number 7 of the SDG. I say this because even when you take Vision 30-30 for power, it is saying that there will be 30,000 megawatts by year 2030, 30% of which will be from renewable energy apart from hydropower. So that 30,000 megawatts is a little bit different from the 25,000 megawatts of Siemens roadmap for power, but all of them are not up to the 63,000 megawatts that SDG say we should have for the country to meet that goal. So all of them should be put together. Again, one major area is to move towards satisfying Nigerians is that municipalities like Lagos, like Kano, like Takos, even Abuja, Baden, so on and so forth, that are heavy load centers, should have embedded power plants to bridge the demand supply gaps at those locations. Again, for other locations, the rural areas, and those very remote locations, you have to use off-grid and mini-grid plants in order to power communities, enable businesses to flourish, and poverty to begin to disappear. Chairman, I want to again move to the oil and gas sector. And before that, I want to also mention that this issue of gas, that so many of the gas power plants are complaining, to me, it is not something too difficult because there are numerous gas fields in the country that should be developed to ensure the gas power plants, which the majority get the quantity and quality of gas they need. Also, arrangements with the relevant MDAs should be done so that the provision of biofuels for the future plants, so that when the plants are ready, there will be no delays due to lack of the needed fuels. Then issue of actualization of licenses of NAC. I think what we need to do, I participated in the investment summit done, I think, around 2008, 2009, during the Good Luck Jonathan administration. Immediately after that investment summit, so many bankers, I think they funded a few of the licenses of NAC. And this is what made me to say that if we have regular investment summits, the private sector will begin to understand the needs of the sector and part of their fears to be relayed. There is also the need to entrench energy efficiency and conservation, which is capable of reducing electricity demand by up to 40%, as shown by the Energy Commission when it did a project with ECOWAS government, with ECOWAS and the Cuban government, and in Abuja. And there is the need for local production of spares and power plant components, while imports will continue for several years to come. Very heavy and wide expansion of utilization of such renewable energy technologies as renewable energy components will be facilitated if we have assembly plants in country to produce this needed package. Now, the last point on this slide is pointing out on the need to act decisively and very firmly when anybody is caught stealing power components or putting wrong connections, they should be dealt with decisively in line with the provision of the law. On environmental sustainability for oil and gas, needed actions are that, in my candid opinion, importation of refined petroleum products can be effectively curtailed if licenses for private refineries, including modular ones, are issued to groups that meet set guidelines. Also, the full government refineries should be concessioned to the private sector, like the hydro plants. I wouldn't say complete sale, but concessioning, I think, is more reasonable. Oil spills can be effectively curtailed if heavy fines are charged to companies causing the spills. Gas flaring can also be effectively handled by heavily fining those that are found to meet such misdemeanors. Now, the last point on this slide is pointing to what happened very recently. And here I'm saying every effort should be made to ensure that the recently launched Abuja Kaduna Kano gas pipeline project is executed in planned 2-year time frame. And this is because there are so many gas-based industries that are spreading all over. And all Nigerians with visions and mission should not hesitate to key into this provision of setting up industries for petrochemicals, fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, and so on and so forth. Now, there's the issue of passage of the petroleum industry bill into law. This is necessary to harmonize the various disparate legal provisions related to the oil industry and make Nigerians to have enhanced control of the sector. It should be noted that even though the petroleum industry governance bill has already been passed into law, it is not really good enough. And this is because PIB really and truly has 4 components. The PIGB is only one. There are 3 other components that should also be approved so that Nigerians will get firmer control of the sector. There is the implementation of biofuel policy, like I mentioned. This can be done with the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, teams of Ministry of Agriculture, and other stakeholders to develop large farms and agro-allied industries for producing ethanol and biodiesel in the country, along with the creation of thousands, if not millions, of jobs for unemployed Nigerians. The Niger Delta militancy, I think, the way the government has been doing should continue. I'm sure many of us know that whenever there are delays in meeting the provision of the amnesty, some aspects of tension comes up. But to me, the tension in the Niger Delta can be significantly minimized if oil blocks in the Lake Chad Basin around Borno and Yobe and Upper Benue Trough around Bauchi and Gombe, and exploration activities in other inland basins like Enugu Basin, Edo Basin, Bida Basin, Sokoto Basin, and others are concluded as quickly as possible. Because once this happens, then the Niger Delta will see that there are other opportunities to get oil and gas, not only rely on the Niger Delta. Now, there's one area, Mr. Chairman, which I thought I should quickly go through, because it is something that is happening in the world as a whole, and we should not lose sight of it, and that is the issue of electric vehicles. It is one that is propelled, electric vehicle is one that is propelled by one or more electric motors that are powered by rechargeable batteries, which are in turn charged by electricity, and the frequency of charging will depend on the capacity of the batteries and distances to be traveled by the vehicles. And this means that premium motor-spirit, that is petrol, which is the fuel for small vehicles, automotive gas oil, or simply diesel, which is the fuel for large vehicles, trucks, and so on and so forth, trains, and aviation kerosene, which is the fuel for aeroplanes, are all replaced by electricity stored in deep cycle rechargeable batteries. Thus, usual combustion of petrol or aviation kerosene or diesel in fuel vehicles and the accompanying carburetor and injector systems are all replaced by electric motors EVs that activate the driving shaft. In fact, a typical fuel vehicle has more than 200 components, while electric vehicle has just about 20. Now, the general interest in electric vehicles has led to the production of improved deep discharge rechargeable battery that can be fully charged within minutes and can be used for hundreds of kilometers in a single charge. Right now, Japan and Germany, and I was told American companies are competing to produce a bank of batteries that will take vehicles up to 1,000 kilometers. That is from Sokoto, you can get to Lagos on a single charge, not to talk from Abuja to Lagos on a single charge. And the competition is quite stiff. It has also led to intense research and development activities on production of very efficient drives that can be activated by equally highly effective electric motors. And this led several countries, announce policies on the dates for banning production importation of petrol and diesel vehicles. Some of the countries at random, you can see them listed here: Austria, China, Costa Rica. Some of them it is already effective, like Japan, Portugal, South Korea, Spain. It's already effective. The other countries, from Costa Rica, you can see developing countries, Costa Rica next year, they ban importation or local production of fuel vehicles, so on and so forth. You can see on this, I think no African countries has decided on this, so we can continue to sell a little bit of our oil to African countries. But I quickly add that more and more African countries are discovering their oil, and that is the reason for reduction in sale of Nigerian oil. And we need to, I'll come back towards the end of the presentation on the same point. Now, on environmental concerns, I want to emphasize that they can be effectively handled by producing and implementing an updated blueprint for climate change mitigation and adaptation as required by SDG 13, and also by conducting comprehensive environmental assessment report for all major energy projects so that all negative impacts will be identified and mitigated. Other actions I've already mentioned, but quickly, for sake of completion, I will say oil spillages can be minimized by heavy penalty for such misdemeanors. Penalties may include the type of the Ogoni clean-up project that is currently being undertaken by the federal government, heavy fining, as I mentioned, and then floodings from dams can be minimized by ensuring the release of excess water is done in line with professional code of practice. Desert encroachment can be handled by two approaches. The first is to develop plantations of big growing tree species. I believe the Great Green Wall project can take this kind of ideas, and when the quick growing trees reach about 1.5 to 2 years, they can be harvested for fuel wood production so that natural forests are left untouched. The second approach is coming up with gas utilization schemes so that gas could be used as cooking fuel to replace fuel wood. I say this because the 203 trillion standard cubic feet of gas is so good, and the carbon footprint of gas is much lower than that of petrol and diesel, much lower. So gas is somewhat cleaner fuel than those other fuels. And more and more of the basins that are being explored, like the Kolmani in Bauchi Gombe area, there is more gas than oil. I understand also the Chad Basin, where the Chad Basin, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, are lifting both crude oil and gas. There's also significant quantity of gas. So gas is being discovered by the day. And I think this idea of using gas as cooking is Of course, I know many of us will say Nigerians are careless, but I think we can adopt the technology, enlighten Nigerians to use gas as safely as possible. Now, in conclusions, Chairman, I want to emphasize that the energy poverty bedeviling Nigeria can be effectively curtailed in an environmentally sustainable pathway by implementing SDG 7, that is on affordable and clean energy, SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, as well as SDG 13, climate action, by adopting the following strategies. For the power, we need to expand the energy mix, as I mentioned, and the expansion of the energy mix will also include use of embedded plants and off-community plants, special purpose vehicle following the style of the National Integrated Power Project and Nigeria Power Holding Company should be created or should be amended to produce plants for significant utilization of the local energy power plants, so that the power plants will be constructed and the evacuation infrastructure as well. And at the end, they should be concessioned transparently to the private sector. And government, I want to emphasize, should convert its 40% now nominal shareholding in the discourse to actual, and to insist that the private group should also fully pay their 60%. Because now, to me, it seems nobody is sure whether the private groups have to pay up to 60%. So the discourse will be better corporately managed to expand their facilities and will all available power for distribution to consumers. This issue of better corporate management is simple. If government pays 40% shareholding, government will insist if the private groups appoint managing director, government will appoint chairman of the board. Then government can insist 10 board members, private group to take 6, government to take 4. When this happens, I'm sure the discourse will be managed differently to what is happening at the moment. Now, there have been calls, especially by state governors, for state governments to be allowed part of the 40% shareholding. But I think governments should not be given part of this 40%. Rather, we can put individuals in the states of jurisdiction of the discourse who have shown good business acumen could be allowed as part of this 40% shareholding. Now, the funding of the transmission system, as I said, should be increased. Now, the regulator should continue to be active. It wasn't active some years ago, but over the past very few years, it has become very active. So the players in the Nigerian electricity supply industry should be closely monitored, and members clearly under appointment should have their operating licenses withdrawn. Now, for the oil and gas, I want to quickly say that the 4 government refineries should be fully rehabilitated and concessioned transparently. The PID is along with the National Assembly to pass into law so Nigerians can take more control. Sector licenses for private refineries, including modular ones, should be issued for groups that meet the set requirements. It should also be noted that electric vehicles are unstoppable. They are unstoppable international phenomenon. The nation should prepare fully for that. In the next 20 years or so, the demand for the nation's oil and gas will drop significantly. This is because so many countries are moving to embrace electric vehicles. To me, it is possible if we are very serious to come with significantly revenue source through agriculture, through mining, through tourism, and so on and so forth. But that will be a full lecture in the future. Now, the nation actually can more effectively use crude oil in the country for the areas that are listed earlier, petrochemicals, fertilizers, and so on and so forth. There's also the need for the nation to prepare well for electric vehicles by having a gradual arrangement to have EV assembly plants and their charging systems, while Nigerians are being encouraged to design and locally produce EVs in their charging ports. On the environmental front, there is the need for the nation to comprehensively update climate change mitigation and adaptation plans so that Nigeria will meet the requirement of SDG 13, that's climate action by year 2030. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your attention, and I think we can now continue with the meeting. Thank you very much.
Yes, for Sambo, our own Professor Samba Abubakar, we really appreciate you, the Chairman Task Force on Power and the Chairman Advisory Board of the Council for Renewable Energy. We appreciate your being here in some personal recognition, not as an official obligation. And that is why we say thank you very much. The lecture was really very impactful and educative, and excellent lecture, if I must say, and exactly the mind of every of our distinguished people that are here. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. Some questions have been coming in. We'll go back to that. The ones who could not answer will really in due course through the secretariat management of this the host. We direct some of the questions officially to you through your email. Some people want to have the record. If we will permit, give your permission, if the record could be sent to some of members who are present here, who will be very interested to have the voice message and also the lecture presentation. Some people are showing a lot of interest. If they are permitted to, you can send it. We will need your permission for that as we are moving on. I would like to invite the next guest speaker, Your Excellency Ambassador Henry Macaulay, former Minister of Power in Sierra Leone. You are welcome and the floor is open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, my good friend and brother. Thank you very much, Professor Sambo. Indeed, we all learned a lot, and I got quite a bit of additional education this morning. Thank you so much. My humble greetings to everybody here, all of the panelists, and a special thanks to Chairman Dr. Sonia Aboibo for this invitation. Very often in this part of the world, when you're a former public servant, you are largely ignored, and nobody invites you to anything important. So, Dr. Sonia, thank you very much for thinking about me. I'm very grateful. I must also congratulate Dr. Sonia for his relentless pursuit of excellence in this very important sector of renewable energy supply, not only in Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole. He has been doing this with a lot of passion over decades, and even going further to empower youth and manpower in the academy and other programs. I pray for you, my brother, that as you bring light to others, of COVID-19 today. In the hospital, supply for clinics. You will all agree with me that COVID-19 become much less impact. So energy is that you cannot gainsay it. It's the driver of the economy. Of course, as Prof has pointed out, we have various types of energy, chemical, sound, heat, light. But today we're talking about electrical energy, and Prof spoke about the oil and gas also, which is important. In the electrical energy, we talk about energy that is derived from potential energy. And all energy must have a potential to induce. But according to the World Bank and IMF, the availability of energy has a direct correlation on GDP growth. More megawatts, higher GDP, plain and simple. And in fact, we used to say that the cost of darkness is much higher than the cost of light. Because when you talk about installation of power supply, power plants, people look at the cost. But if you think that's expensive, imagine the high cost of darkness with regards to the cost of security, the cost of healthcare, clean water supplies, small and even large businesses, agriculture, clean and safe water, and so on and so forth. Even education, where in our small villages, students who have a potential to become heads of states in the future have to be studying using local language, which will give them tuberculosis at best, or not blind people of life. So cost of darkness is very high. But the generation of electricity is at the beginning end of the cycle, because after the generation, you have the transmission, distribution, and the collection. And each part is of paramount importance for the process to be sustainable. In fact, one of the World Bank studies in 2008 identified that all these areas must be developed concurrently, otherwise there will be an imbalance in the collapse of the system. For example, if you have generation which cannot be transmitted and distributed, we call it standard generation. That means that the investment in that generation is wasted. And vice versa. If you have distribution structure, that generation to derive it, then it becomes a wasted investment. So all of that is developed. But what we always look at as probably the most critical part of this whole cycle is the distribution part, distribution aspect, the collection especially. That is why we sometimes refer to the distribution companies as cash logistics of the sector. But that is where monies are collected. Everything else before then is investment. But at distribution end, monies are collected. And that's why it needs to be very efficient and transparent. Of course, some of the areas you need to strengthen distribution, apart from provision of prepaid meters, which includes cash flow sector, it includes transparency. We recommend that even institutions and government buildings be equipped with prepaid meters. But also, fighting electricity crimes is very important. And fighting electricity crimes, we recommend that the courts should come in also, providing faster courts to be being able to regulate electricity crimes, punish perpetrators, and ensure that every penalty and fines are imposed. Back in Sierra Leone, we also use the anti-corruption commission because they have the power to levy fines. So that we had a crack team that would go out and rate suspected perpetrators of electricity crimes, and there action will be taken. So this is very important. And you know, as Prof said, the changing environment and the changing landscape of country or the nation, it also means that we have a changing demand for electricity. We observe that in Nigeria, for example, and everywhere, with increased population growth, we have increased appetite for economic activity. And this means you must have adequate energy. But first, we will talk about adequate energy. What we mean by adequate energy, we talk about energy sufficiency. And then you go on to talk about energy security, which is for one. But in this, at this stage of our own life, I think we look at power supply that will ensure that you have the capacity to deliver on promises, and also with the responsibility to make sure that there's a sustainable climate impact. And the curious thing about power supply is that it has a reverse economic model. It is not demand but great supply. It supply that creates demand. If you provide the power, consumers will use the power. So it means that the onus is on the power suppliers, power providers, the government and private sector, to tweak their economic model, to tweak their investment plans so that there could be an advancement of electricity to stimulate demand and the returns. But this will be for different conversation. But today, to address environmental sustainability, I think what Bucket said is spot on. We need to look at the energy mix, the right energy mix. Of course, Nigeria has a huge potential for solar energy, for example. With average solar irradiance of over 6-7 kilowatt hours per day. And Aston has been doing very well in this area, providing solar power, from people's solar power all the way to solar PVs. Unfortunately, until battery technology improves, you still need some kind of thermal power. But you must provide a base load to encourage industrialization. For now, you need to have base load provided by either heavy fuel oil, diesel, or gas. Thankfully, Nigeria has sufficient gas and those have been able to meet that demand. Nigeria also has an intimidating hydropower potential, especially with the but we know that hydros, in as much as they can also provide base load, but they're seasonal. And today, the very climate change we're trying to address today impacts the hydrology of hydros. So you can see, for example, in Syria, we will have a sweep from about 50 megawatts of our wind hydros going down to 5 megawatts around May. So you can see the significant gap. Wind energy is what we also. A long-term studies need to be done to collect data before deployment. Nuclear power as platform without possibility, of course, must be subject to regulatory and sometimes political considerations. So the sustainability of the environment has to depend on proper planning of the right energy mix. And I think that using more of renewable energy for public consumers, smaller communities, will manipulate of the solutions and will work very well because we do provide cleaner energy to those consumers while we reserve the less clean energies like gas, although gas is cleaner than HFO, but it's still a thermal energy. We could reserve those for industrial growth. So therefore, you have that reduction of dependency on fossil fuels. Adequate energy definitely supports the eradication of poverty and enhances wealth creation. Economic activity will improve the quality of life, and ensuring the sustainability of the environment will definitely mean there's a general all-round positive impact of power supply. To round up, because after Rob's very rich lecture, nothing much more would be added. But to round up, I agree wholly with Bob. You must have an ecosystem of sustainability when you approach this topic. I think something that comes to mind in terms of reducing dependence on oil and gas, for example, is maybe a more urgent development of the non-oil sector. That would mean that there will be another availability of income generating ability, and oil and gas maybe dependency will reduce, and all the attendant consequences of gas flaring and environmental damage will also be reduced. I think also development of partnerships is important. Both the private sector and the government should look at working together to develop the value chain in terms of generation with GENCOs, distribution with DISCOs, and manpower development as well, which is important. When you talk about energy security, for example, we have to make sure that we have homegrown solutions and not depend on products that is coming by power here. Nor can you always depend on technology coming by the system. So homegrown solutions are important. And this will be part of the partnership that governments will of the solutions for the community issues. I think members of the public consumers should know that they must be in partnership with government as well. Because when government makes installations or provides power solutions, local communities have to be in first responders to care for those installations. Because so many times you see vandalization. I remember we were invited by state governments to go and have a look at what we're doing. And the level of vandalization we saw was quite where people deliberately pull down lights and damage solar panels. So I think local communities should be sensitized that these installations are here, they are for you, and you have to be first caretakers. Development of transmission is very important. I think developing the transmission backbone of going around the 400 kV and then having connecting lines that will help to bring the grid faster to many communities. But I think that the cost benefit analysis should be done properly to see how well the investment matches to the benefits and to make a decision as to whether it might be better to install an upgrade solution. So all in all, I must say that I also agree with Bob that private sector involvement is important, and I think that efficiency and competence can be increased with private sector involvement. I agree with that completely. And I also think that for larger load customers or larger load states, embedded power is certainly an exciting option because when you have a willing buyer, willing seller kind of situation, I remember a World Bank economic analyst came to see me when I was in office and said that his mission was not to study, two studies actually. One was the willingness to pay, and two was the ability to pay study. So I said to him, okay, I said, please conduct one more study for me. He said, okay, that. As he conducted a study on the cost of darkness, and he said, what do I mean? I said, your terms of reference will take you to education, healthcare, small businesses, large businesses, agriculture, and other areas where electricity supply or lack of it impacts heavily. I said, and finally, when you conduct your willingness to pay and your ability to pay, please don't only go to communities that have been in electoral darkness. Go to communities that have had some level of electricity and ask them if they be willing to pay a little bit more for constant power. And I want to try it again. But the point I'm making here is that people who have tested the value of electricity, they're willing to pay a little bit more for that. And that goes towards supporting positive electric tariffs in the long run. But electric tariffs only come in after we've had incremental power supply, which will be to fix what we have and make sure it's functioning properly, and we have stable power, as Bob said. Until you provide stable power to consumers, it will be a bit troublesome to have some more power. So all in all, I must say again, I'm concluding. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's very exciting, and I think it's in the right time. So I just want to urge the organizers and Dr. Sonny, my friend, and all of us that as we deliberate on this all too important topic, we should not allow such an effort like this to die. Because very often, important issues are discussed on distinguishable and useless, but the follow-up is very minimal. So I would all just want to develop this discourse into very well. That will reach all of the relevant sectors, guests, and actors who bring our joint dreams of reducing energy poverty and increasing economic development in Nigeria and beyond. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate the deliberation.
Thank you, Ambassador Henry Macaulay. In fact, our two guest speakers have done a wonderful lecture. Like I learned before, and I continue to learn again, I will tell a short story where I met Ambassador Macaulay. We met in Abidjan when ADB invited us on off-grid revolution. There and there, they invited one energy provider, access to energy in Africa, and the president of the ADB said there should be energy revolution, off-grid revolution, because every year 600,000 people died in Africa because lack of access to clean and affordable energy. So if he's going to stay there for 10 years, meaning 6,000 people, 600,000 people times 10 will die, according to their study. That is why he's calling for the off-grid revolution. Is there any solution? One man stood up and said, yes, they are providing energy for Africa. And he asked me, and I said, you provide system. Is there any sustainability? Is there any after-sales service? The young man who is at a very young age said, Africa needs energy and is giving us energy. He's not a teacher. That was where I met Ambassador Macaulay. Said, you are not a teacher, but of course, this is a slap on Africa. Africa needs energy. We need a sustainable energy. That is where we became friends, and we have been in contact for many years, for all the time when he was a minister. Anyway, the cost of darkness is more expensive than the cost of generating power, no matter how. If you break it down educationally, the health sector, educational sector, education sector, business sector. And it's a pleasure to have you, two of you, Professor Sambo, and also Ambassador Henry Macaulay here. A lot of questions are flying in. Some of the questions will be briefly sent forward. If I will call on Professor Mann for questions, because the sector has one or two occasions to attend, and I wouldn't take it for granted to have you here. Maybe about 3 questions from me, if not 4 or 5. I will pass over to Professor Magnus, who is the host of this laudable ECHO expert. And Professor Magnus, the floor is open for you to send some of those questions that are easy. If not, the other ones will be sent through email, and the email will be forwarded before we run them. Thank you, Professor Magnus. The floor is open. Professor Magnus, are you there?
He pointed out. Send your questions. So I'm going to, Christian will now read the questions, and I know Professor Sambo and Ambassador Macaulay will do justice to that. But quickly, let me say this, Mr. Chairman. Honestly, I will say that Professor Sambo's exposition about expansion, the need for us to using energizing education model is very, very apt. Or with respect to renewable energy and energy efficiency, because energizing education is very, very significant. He used the Bauchi University and Alessio Kwembe. So if we can replicate that, it is very, very significant. So, and that's why I agree with what Engineer Ambassador Macaulay said. We're going to turn out a policy brief now based on this presentation. Very, very critical. And number 2, he talked about the investment summit. And I'm telling you honestly, it's very critical that as from this moment, look at it from 2008 to present, there hasn't been any investment. We take that into consideration. And of course, the assembly plant is talked about too. So it's very critical. So thank you so much for the presentation. So, and I want to hand over to Christian, just turn out the questions so that they will just do justice to that. Mr. Chairman, so I'm handing over to Christian. Christian is going to read out the questions right now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian from Mexican Group of Companies, and I'm here to take the question. The first question is from Mr. Luis. He said, will current legal provisions allow for the implementation of the modular power unit. This question is directed to Professor Sambo. So, Professor Sambo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christian. I think this is a very good question from Dr. Luis. The thing is that at the moment, there's nothing that will stop the provision of power on a modular arrangement. As a matter of fact, just a few days ago, I was checking with the officials of the Electricity Regulatory Commission, and I got the information there are up to 50 small solar PV projects scattered in different parts of Nigeria, where even the payment is about almost double the current rate of the electricity being sold by the distribution companies. So because of this, I think there will be no problem at all. All that is required, again, is for the regulator to be very active, to issue all appropriate licenses, and I think it will materialize. So to me, there is no problem. It can be implemented.
Thank you, Professor Sambo, for that brief answers to the question of Dr. Lewis. The second question goes from Mr. Suleiman. Mr. Suleiman says, how can we shift to renewable energy sources without serious research on them and linkages to the leading energy research centers across the globe? So this question is still directed to the entire host. Any of the hosts can answer that. Thank you.
Maybe I should just start by saying, actually, at the moment, renewable power plants are not new. They are standards in so many parts of the world. If you go to Germany, it's the order of the day, Spain, and so on and so forth. So it's nothing new. All that is required for Nigeria is the relevant authority to put all the necessary specifications in their call bidding. That's all. And I can assure you, so many groups within Nigeria will apply for getting the contract for such projects. While at the same time, researches are going on in our institutions, higher learning and research centers. That will not stop research, but for utilizing components of renewable energy for power supply, there's nothing to research further. Of course, invention is the order of the day. Every day you have got new solar photovoltaic panels, improved batteries, charge controllers, things, but newer and newer batteries are coming. When the new ones come, they will be utilized. But at the moment, we don't need to wait for more research before we start heavy utilization. Let me allow the ambassador to speak.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you so much for your question. Actually, a lot of research is ongoing in terms of improving the various components of renewable energy. They're going on concurrently as we speak. Development research into improving the efficiency of batteries is ongoing. Cost of panels is coming down because of the research that is now bringing on board cheaper methods of producing the panels. The whole entire electricity sector, including renewable energy sector, so in fact, more so renewable energy sector, is very dynamic. And because there is money to be made, as you can well imagine, money is being invested into developing much better models and developing cheaper solutions in higher economic benefits. So it will not stop. It should not stop our own deployment of what we have. It's a constant progress, work in progress. So I don't think that it should stunt what we need to do. what we currently have. We have sufficient availability of solar technology, of renewable energy assets that we can deploy today. Nigeria has a lot of 3,500 megawatts small hydropower potential. This can be deployed in a hybrid situation or hybrid solutions for smaller communities that have really slow running rivers. You can put on hydro turbines to provide electricity. So I think that the key to it all is to have this integrated approach that Prof mentioned, harnessing all that we have and fit it into one complete roadmap, and then proceed towards implementing that roadmap judiciously, effectively, and efficiently. And we should be able to get there. Whilst the research is going on, new technology will catch up with us, but we should be on our way as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Prof. Please, let me quickly intervene here. For example, how do we reconcile right now Nigeria? There was a research done some few years ago about the availability of sand in the northeast, especially Yobe and Gobe, and some part of about and we know that for so long, for us to do well in this solar, you talk about solar plant assembly. So how do we upscale our research and see that sand, is a good user? Because if you get the silicon out of it, that the price of this solar technology will drop. So Prof, I want you to just highlight more about the opportunities for silicon production here.
Yes, I fully agree with you, Prof, that if that is done, it will reduce the costs significantly, and that can be done to get the major technology countries. There are many of them. The European countries led by Germany, Spain. Then when you come to China, South Korea, there are so many. So if we find out which country will agree, come and use our own high quality plants, like the two you mentioned. There are many other too around Kasina and so on and so forth. Many parts of Nigeria, you get high quality plants. I think we just find which country, which of the technology power countries will agree to come and utilize our sons and move in this subject. It is possible, but while we are waiting for the country to agree, we can as well come in the ways like, NASENI, National Agency for Science and Infrastructure, has done in Abuja, and the smaller version at the Sokoto Energy Research Center. Sokoto Energy Research Center, they are using German technology through the World Bank facility, and then NASENI is utilizing all funds with company in China. So those ones are being showcased. But I think if we want much larger volume of output from photovoltaic panels and the balance of system components, we need to do what you mentioned and go back to the countries that will allow the addition of our own sun here in Nigeria. There are so many other components. We may not get 100% of content components within Nigeria. We can move significantly 80% or so. If we can get 80%, I think the cost per unit of module and the remaining components is significantly reduced. I hope you have not missed the question of our father, or shall I say our grandfather, Professor Dugu, who celebrated his 90th birthday. He is on this webinar. I can see him there. He asked a question. He asked a question. I say our father or grandfather because he taught my teachers at ABU Zaria. I didn't, of course, the time I was ABU, I left long. He taught my teachers. That's why I say maybe my fantastic. So you really very good. He asked questions of battery. And sir, I want to say one of the areas that I emphasize strongly in my presentation is electric vehicles. The push of electric vehicles from very powerful countries has got two major synergies with renewable energy. And that's the issue of deep cycle storage batteries, and the other one, like renewable energy for wind and hydro, and also on the issue of biomass, biofuels. They are efficient drives. Significant progress is being done, and the cost of battery is going down significantly. So, Prof. Beredikusa, don't worry, the cost of batteries are coming back significantly, very quickly. And even as it is now, in many countries, with the current cost of battery, the levelized cost of electricity production is such that electricity from solar is cheaper than conventional electricity in many countries. Germany is one, Spain is another, and I think very soon in Africa too will follow suit.
Christian, last of the
yes, there's more. Yeah, there's more questions at the chat section. Thank you, Professor Abubakar. Thank you, Ambassador Macaulay, for the quick response, and thank you, Mr. Magnus, Dr. Magnus, for the brief answers to Suleiman's questions. The next question is from Oladuni Owo. The question goes like this: what's the plan to make this happen? As in, he said, up till now, Nigeria is not producing solar wafers and panels. What is the plan to make this happen rather than imports from China? What this question was directed to any of the panel?
I think I've already answered it. I said,
that's the answer to the question. Yeah.
We look for the country. There are many countries. If one does not, one will agree. In Nigeria, sample various sands. We have high quality sands in so many, all geopolitical zones. We have high quality sands. We bring them in the sample. In fact, I say we can even move across the radio. We check, and when I was with my friend the other day, Dr. Cont'd, we met in South Africa. We were chatting with him even on this same topic. We spent hours past midnight chatting, and I think we'll find if Nigeria and other countries will find sense that we can. If some countries don't agree, I'm sure one or two countries will agree with us.
Very correct. So, what's the last question? Next question.
The next question is from Engineer Michael. Question to Professor Abubakar: on the background of energy wastage, how can we legislate the ban of incandescent lamp and adopt more energy lighting like LED and domicile manufacturing and disposal of the same thing?
In the year 2010, the Ministry of Science that was supervising the Energy Commission at the time, I was the Director General, asked us to go and understudy Ghana, because Ghana was doing very well energy efficiency and conservation. And we went there, and we so simply put, the government banned the import of the components that are not needed, and on the other hand, allowed high efficiency components, the LEDs. In fact, Ghana 2010, they were assembling LEDs, producing LEDs at the outskirts of Accra. We were very happy to see that. And the other countries like Nigeria can follow suit. It's a government decision, government legislation. The customs and the equivalent of standard organizations in Nigeria were fully involved with the Energy Commission of Ghana to ensure that is being done. They were significantly reducing wastages through that. I know in Nigeria we say customs are bad, but I think that Chinese say the journey of a single 1,000 miles, that we need to start. The custom will not continue to be rotten for eternity. I think we can also follow the way Ghana have done it in Nigeria. In fact, we were surprised to go to Ghana because we were told we don't need to go to Germany to see how things are being done. Somebody that was working in the Nigerian embassy there knew what they were doing. And we went to Ghana and we spent 5 days. We were very happy with them.
In fact,
hold on. As a follow-up to Professor Sambo's listen, his Energy Commission of Nigeria has a sustainable energy bill now that is before the National Assembly. I was part of the team that reviewed that. The issue of energy efficiency was just addressed. So I believe that the moment we get that bill, it is going to address the question being asked by Michael. I want to tell you that it's Energy Commission that is driving that among other Nigerian stakeholders.
And if I may add, by your kind permission, if I may quickly add, by your kind permission, Professor, and by your kind permission, for Magnus, I think with energy wastage, because I remember I visited Tunisia, and they have a deliberate policy to replace incandescent lighting with LEDs. And in many cases, it's a self-financing activity, because your reduction of electricity bills is more than enough sometimes to help you to effect this replacement. But in addition to that, there's also the issue of making sure you have energy efficient appliances, which they build into their building code. So if you're building a house, you have to show that all of the appliances you're going to install in that house, they have an energy efficiency certificate. And finally, in terms of just even the manual steps we can take, switching off power when you're not using it, energy conservation, energy efficiency, I think all of that helps to reduce energy wastage. In countries where we have challenges with power supply availability, I always advise my people that the power you waste is the power somebody else needs. So let's stop wasting power.
Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the eco sector. It is a long time we have been here, and I really appreciate your time. A lot of questions are still waiting, but I would advise, because of time, those questions should be sent directly through email. And we assure you that we are going to get a concept note sent to everybody, and those questions will direct them to the right persons to answer. And we email you the questions back, and especially the answers, because the time is fast spent. This brought me to a point. It's not easy to get Professor Sambo here. Now that you are here, there is a topic our own Dr. Talba moderated as a guest speaker some weeks ago. It's about the lead renewable energy and energy efficiency policy. This policy has been there since 2015, and the practitioner in the eco sector are yelling that when actually this policy is going to be implemented. However, this is not the topic of today, but if you will permit us to meet you in line with the alliance, consult you on how to move forward to make some input on how the implementation of the renewable energy and energy efficiency policy, because people are crying. The common man are saying renewable energy is expensive. Renewable energy costs a lot of money. There is a policy that would make it cheaper for the common man, even the business owners who want solar home rooftop in their business, the SME. So we will definitely, it's not a debate for today, but you will permit us that sometime along the line, we will need you as our lead to drive our opinion, to drive our queries, how to address the policy. Anyway, to move forward, because I don't want to make it a debate, there is an investment mission, because access to clean energy needs funding. For the notice of everybody, any Nigerian who is a practitioner or maybe a technocrat who has a bankable project, I have been discussing with the East European businessmen who said they have some funds, about $1 billion, to provide a loan and finance in the renewable energy sector in Nigeria. And we've come to a point where they said, okay, they will be hosting a Nigerian East Europe Business Summit and Expo that is coming up on the 17th to 20th of September in Macedonia. It will be interaction. For anybody who is interested, could send email right in this platform, and the necessary documentation, including flight ticket, visas, and hotel, will be taken care of, especially the terms and conditions. The email to be sent directly to the forum, and they will reply to you. At this point, I will say thank you to every one of you, and I want to give 1 minute roundup to Professor Abubakar Sambo to just round up this presentation of various thinking of the way forward, because the 5th edition will be coming up. Professor Abubakar Sambo, 1 minute for just round up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am very delighted to participate in this event, and I think listening to all that has been said, I would want to invite the Academy, and indeed CREN, join the Ministerial Task Force Power, so that we can take the issue of implementation of national renewable energy and energy policy that was approved in 2015. And then definitely myself and 1 or 2 members, I can see 1 member of the task force is here with us. I think another 1 too has joined. He didn't put his name from his telephone. I can see that too. So 3 of us, we would like to participate in this trade mission that you've mentioned. I think this is one of the ways we can bring a country so we can get 1 or 2 technologies for our country. Who knows? Maybe they can let us go into the science of production of wafers for solar PV.
Thank you very much, Professor Sambo. It's a very nice wind up, and I will go to Ambassador Henry Macaulay for a short brief in all the roundup for our discussion today. 1 minute, Professor Ambassador Macaulay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sani. I think that with all said, for us to move forward from energy poverty to sustainable, environmentally sensitive energy growth, we need to look inward. So what we have are resources, both human and material resources. We need also to be abreast of technology, global technology, as regards our sector. We need to develop a plan, an integrated plan, and then we need to implement that plan scrupulously in partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I think at this point we will close for today, and our next edition and the topic of the edition will be communicated accordingly. Like I said, the investment summit, any professional in the industry, even a guest for B2B meeting who is interested to attend can drop his email address. Mr. Sam from